Hello, everybody, and welcome to Outer Rim Transmission number 76. We're here for a very special episode. It's not every day we get to talk about the premiere of a brand new Star Wars series, and certainly we've been waiting a long time to talk about Andor. So here we are, Milton, Ben, and I, Chris, aka Starrapter, to break it down. Not one, not two, but 3 episodes of Andor out of the 12 episode season 1. We're going to talk about it. How you guys doing today? How you feeling?
I'm good, man. Just glad to be back on the podcast, ready to talk some Andor. Hopefully this should be a pretty good discussion about a pretty interesting show.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting discussion. I'm the big thing is I would say the big takeaway is I'm just glad like Star Wars is back. We're back to like talking new content every week, and it's going to be a fun 9 or 10 weeks total, I guess you would say. Yeah, like 10 weeks.
Yeah, it definitely cuts it short a little bit. It's kind of unfortunate. It's like, oh, it's one less week. We're talking about Andor now with 3 episodes coming out, but hey, I mean, bigger, it's just, that's a stupid thing to talk about because we're talking about new Star Wars tonight. So we're going to forego our usual things other than just to remind you guys, if you are watching, you can listen to us on a podcast streaming service. We put up our new episodes every Monday. If you are listening, thanks for that. You can go ahead and you can watch and participate in the chat around Fridays around 9 o'clock. We are recording actually a day early for a couple reasons, but we are happy nonetheless to get in deep with Andor. So yes, there's 3 episodes that came out, and the 3 episodes are titled Episode 1 Kassa, Episode 2 What Would Be Me, and Episode 3 Reckoning. So rather than break them each down separately, we're gonna basically talk about them as they were presented to us, which is basically, as we would like the Clone Wars fans would say, this is an arc of the Clone Wars essentially, and this definitely feels like an arc with how Episode 3 leaves off with a big rousing conclusion. We're gonna talk about it as it was presented to us when they dropped all 3 episodes. So talking about it basically in a sense of a Star Wars movie with a little bit over an hour and a half of runtime here. I'm going to throw it off to Milton, who said it was interesting. Just give us our initial thoughts, man, what you're feeling, how you're feeling after the fact of watching all 3 episodes. Just give us a short summary of basically all that.
Yeah, we'll give some more details as we go, but I'll pretty much give you what I said in the group chat yesterday. I was like, 2 episodes in, I'm not impressed with the show. And that was 2 episodes in, just to be clear. Because I just felt that the pacing was a little different. It was a little off to me. I was still having a hard time trying to follow the story slightly. But episode 3, I think, culminated and brought it all together. And as you mentioned, this is an arc. So I think after understanding how they're structuring the show and how it's going to be built, probably broken in different arcs, I enjoyed episode 3 much better than I did episode 2 and 1. So I think I'm gonna have to go back to watch all 3, better understand where they're trying to take it, to see how it all was wrapping it up just in a small arc. Like I said, the first 2 episodes kind of was a struggle to me. I wasn't really feeling the flashbacks, but it paid off in the 3rd episode. And I feel like as we get more of those flashbacks, going to help us better understand Cassian as a character, what's his motivation, who's he looking for. There's a character that he is looking for out the beginning parts of the show. But yeah, at first I just wasn't impressed with it, but as episode 3 was starting to form itself, I was like, okay, I see what they're looking or what they're trying to do here.
Those are really well thought out sentiments about the show, because I could understand what you're talking about. Was like, oh yeah, episode 1, especially episode 2. Like, I usually jot down notes for each episode, and I wrote down a lot of notes for the first episode, and I found myself like, oh, what am I going to talk about with episode 2? What was very that stood out to me, and I kind of really couldn't come up with much, and then I went right into episode 3. But on my rewatch, I found out so much more things that I was engaged with on that second viewing. By the way, this is a spoiler-filled discussion if those of you are unsure, so go back, watch the episodes, and come join us a little bit later whenever you can. I'm going to throw it over to you, Ben. First impressions, man.
Yeah, I would say, like I mentioned to start the show, it's great Star Wars is back. It's it's I would say my first impression, actually, my very first thought getting into the first episode by itself was, man, this show as a whole looks better than Kenobi did as a whole. And we're only 3 episodes in. Yeah, I just think the visuals look better. Obviously, it wasn't shot strictly in the volume, which helps it a ton. And yeah, I thought the cinematography was really done really well. It's definitely interesting. It's like a new take on Star Wars, I guess I would say, just because it's more like grounded, and you're dealing with, I would say, more of like the character building side of Star Wars versus just like a straight up story. Because my like thing, even with the first episode, was it felt like there wasn't a lot of, say, story direction. It was more of a character direction, of like a character piece, like Cassian figuring out who he is versus us getting a concrete storyline for the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said as well with you. These are all great criticisms that we're bringing together. I don't really have a lot of criticisms with this show, if I'm being honest, other than the fact that we're thrown into the midst of it all, and some of the dialogue, I was just like unsure, like, okay, where's this going? And that's just the ramifications of when you're jumping into the middle of a story and you're not figuring out, like, oh, who are all these characters? They already are acting like they've already known each other for a while. We're just like the outside purveyor, just like looking at these people like, okay, just what's a day in their life? But I will like go back to my initial thoughts of the first like 5-10 minutes of the show. Is like, this is unique. This feels so different for Star Wars. It feels a lot like Blade Runner, but it feels just so much like they set out for the show to be, is a spy thriller. You got Cassian walking into this brothel of all places in Star Wars. I was very shocked. Like, okay, people are saying this is the HBO of the most HBO show on Disney Plus, and I kind of could agree, because it's like we haven't really gone to a place like that before in Star Wars, to my knowledge. And just the suggestions of things that were happening, and you got these goons, but then the way the music was too, oh my gosh, I was hooked, just to the ambiance of that bar, and then just the way it's shot when he's walking out onto the causeway, and just like the and this goes for a lot of things with this show, is just the focus on the characters, specifically with the cinematography, like the focus on their facial expressions. Like you can literally see like into his brain, like, oh gosh, these guys are trying to pick a fight with me. Like, here we go. They're just the long lingering shot on Cassian, and just the sheer amount of buildup, multiple parts in the show. But at that moment when he just takes those guys down, I was like, yeah, I think this is the adult Star Wars show that I've been looking for. This is a show that could be along the lines of that canceled 1313 show, or whatever, the Star Wars Underworld show, where it was like, yeah, this is going to be in the Coruscant. Like, I got those vibes, and immediately I was like, I think we're going to be on for a really good ride here. And just the authenticity to Star Wars. They were basically developing this thing for like 3 years, right? Like, I remember at Celebration in Chicago back in 2019, like we got news of like, hey, K2SO is going to be in the show. And here we are, 2022, right, and we're finally getting this. But yeah, the world building for me was incredible. All the characters were great. And I was telling you guys, this is like, I'm happy that Star Wars is taking a bold step to step away from the nostalgia. We're not dealing with Jedi. We're not dealing with Millennium Falcons and TIE fighters just yet, at least. We're at all new locations, and it doesn't feel like we're depending on things like the Joseph Campbell's Heroes of a Thousand Faces stuff that like gets reused 100 times, or the stuff with Kurosawa. Like, we're not getting any of that. This is more like a modern take on Star Wars. I mean, this is the guy, Tony Gilroy, that did the Bourne trilogy and a bunch more modern stuff like that. So it's cool to see Star Wars like, hey, what would Star Wars be like if we got a show in the ways that things are done these days on dramas? So that really shined to me out from everything else. So yeah, that's my opening salvo. I really enjoyed this show so far. So we could just go from just looking at, let's start with the flashbacks. I know you guys are both huge fans of the Arrowverse, and I thought about Milton specifically because I was like, oh, this is exactly like Arrow. We're going back and forth to doing different things. And especially by the end of episode 3, I thought they did a brilliant job of just juxtaposing his journey as a kid being picked up by Marta and Clem Andor, and going to another planet while Luthen Rael was taking him off world. I love that. I think it added so much element, and I like the fact that there's a good pacing for me, at least. Like, oh, we're getting a little bit of his story here, a little bit of this, and all that. So, what did you guys think about the flashbacks?
Yeah, I mean, I thought initially it was one of the weakest parts of the series thus far until, like I said, as the payoff was going, as it was progressing. I think, like we mentioned, Arrow is one of my favorite shows to watch. I thought in that particular show, the flashbacks in the first 2 seasons just pick up quick and they just move the show. I just felt that this was slowing the show down for me at parts early on. But as the show was progressing and I was starting to get a better picture, the payoff was dope. I loved how they were showing the pretty much the vertical, like seamless line of what they were trying to tell, in the sense of like Cassian being found by, was it Marta? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Then obviously how he's leaving with, what's that guy's name? I couldn't quite catch it. The guy that came to see him about the box.
Oh, Luthen Rael. I don't even know if they ever said his name. I just know his name from like the credits.
Like, seeing how that parallel was going, I was like, okay, he's now starting to like, enter to another world by going in with this guy, and then Marta brought him. He's now entering to another world. I can see those parallels, and then pretty much it kind of tied into the conversation of, he's like, well, how'd you steal this box? He's like, and it just was dope.
Yeah.
I have to say, flashbacks I think will get better. I think now that I understand where they're going, to me, it's just one of the weakest parts early on.
Okay. And I completely understand that, man, because I was watching, and I think what would have done better if I think they could have cut out like one of those flashback scenes entirely, maybe, and just tightened up the whole feel, because I feel like, at one point I was like, yeah, why are we watching this? And what makes this hard, and tell me about this, Ben. Did you like their approach to just having no subtitles to like whatever dialect, whatever language they were using?
See, I'm kind of torn on that, because I feel like it's an alien species, so we're not supposed to understand it. I mean, technically every character this whole show is alien, even Cassian, just because they're aliens to the different worlds and stuff. But I would say the different languages that were getting spoke, like I would lean toward me being fine with there not being subtitles, just because I think it sets more of a I don't know, it makes it more real, more like foreign, I guess you'd say, versus us like knowing exactly what they're saying. Like like one example I've always heard John Campea talk about, like they easily, like say Phantom Menace. Like the Phantom Menace, they could have easily not even done subtitles and just had the Nemodians talking in their native tongue, and it would have made their whole sequences with the Nemodians a lot better. And seeing stuff like this in this show with the different languages being spoken, like I feel it's fine if there's no subtitles if you're getting a general gist of what's going on. That's like how it's even in real life.
Yeah.
If you're sitting around with someone talking, and you hear people talking and like hand gesturing and things like that, you can kind of get a gist of what's going on based on the context in whatever you're dealing with, and in this case, the scenes we were in.
Oh my gosh, guys, I could talk about like this entire flashback sequence for well over an hour. I really could, because there's so much new Star Wars in this little thing. Like it reminded me of Avatar or something, or like it was so unique, and like I have so many questions still. Like, okay, this planet Canary, like there was obviously like Imperial mining and all that stuff that was happening, or Republic, I guess, at that point. But
Time is Republic, because they talked about what was interesting to me. Again, in the third episode, when he's like, leave the boy. She's like, no, I'm not going to leave him to die. He's like, the Republic aircrafts are going to kill him on sight. He talked about the Republic like in a bad way.
Yeah.
Guys,
I'm thinking, is this
Well,
whenever? Go ahead.
oh yeah, I was gonna say thrown there. Remember, like in Rogue One, they had alluded to Cassian's parents and like the people he grew up with being separatists. So
Yep.
Continue, Milton.
I'm about to say, because that goes back to one of my potential criticisms. Was like, I thought in the book or in the movie he mentioned like his parents, since he's been in this war since he was like 3 or 9
Yeah,
or something.
6.
What was the age?
I think he said 6 years old.
Yeah. Now he don't look 6 in that
No, he
flashback.
looks like 9 or 10.
Yeah, so that's why I was like, well, where I thought he was with his parents throughout the whole time. Maybe like the Republic like wiped his family out in like a battle or something. But that's where, to me, I was like, this is kind of run off canon, right?
Yeah, I don't know, but I wouldn't worry about that too much, me personally at least, because I'm just so curious about, like, I don't know if we've gotten this in Star Wars, certainly not live action Star Wars, but like the idea of like the indigenous people on a planet like discovering like spacefaring people from another world, like, and reacting, because episode 3, Ben, he's like looking at his reflection like he's never seen his reflection before and smashing things like
Yeah.
like a
Yeah, he
barbarian.
freaks
Like, this
out.
was like, holy crap, like he's actually like never seen any of this. Like, when we first see him walk past the mining thing, he's looking like in awe, because I guess he's like a new initiate to like their pillaging or whatever they do. So it was a really effective way to not have the subtitles and just to kind of go on his journey, because you could see like so much of Star Wars, it could be a silent film, like you were saying, about you don't need dialogue, you can understand what's happening on the screen because the characters are represented so well with just their choice of gestures and things and acting and all that. So for me, I thought this was such a cool aspect of Star Wars that I haven't seen before. It was like, oh, it's like looking through his eyes of like entering civilization for the first time.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, just to throw out there as well, like about the whole like age thing, just throw out there. Cassian technically in this series is only like 21 years old, and Diego Luna is like 40. So the age thing doesn't bother me too much. But yeah, in terms of the whole, like you said, going on like the journey with him, like through the mining thing and all of that, I thought that was pretty interesting. It was I guess my interpretation, I guess I didn't see, I'm not sure, like, I haven't really looked into Cassian's backstory in canon much, like, at all. So, for me, it was, like, more of a surprise seeing him grow up in, like, almost like a native area, like, not being around
Well,
that technology and,
that's
like,
all new,
that sort of
yeah.
stuff. That was a total new concept, which I liked, because, new concepts like that, I think, are interesting to include in Star Wars if they're done. I think it was done solidly. Again, like you both said, though, the flashbacks early on, like episodes 1 and 2, were pretty slow, or pretty almost. You could have chopped them down a little bit. The third episode, I thought they did a pretty good job for the flashbacks.
Yeah, so moving away from the flashbacks, let's talk about the titular character, Cassian Andor himself. Let's talk about just what we thought about Diego Luna's performance, what we thought about his journey so far, where we see him going. I'll start this one off. I watched these episodes twice now. I watched them all like again the same day because I was like, I gotta watch this again. I feel like I have a new discovery after watching episode 3, and I did. I had a much better experience picking up on some more details. But I like seeing like Cassian in the spot where, again, we pick up with him. He's already established on Ferric. He's got all these relationships, and just like that episode 1, episode 2 especially, like, he owes this guy money, then he's like making a deal with this guy, and he's like trying to float above water because he's like trying to get off this planet, and he's trying to find his sister that he left behind. We see that in episode 1 in the flashback. All this stuff happening. It's like, it's cool to see Cassian at this point where he's just kind of trying to get through life, and things aren't easy. He's doing what he can. I'll throw it to Milton. What did you think about the depiction of Andor at this point in his life?
I liked it. I mean, look, that's probably the positive for sure. Like, I just want to be very clear. I actually liked the show.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't impressed with the first 2 episodes, and I think as the episode went on, it paid off for me. But as for Andor, Diego Luna is this character. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we have Ewan McGregor. We say he's Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't see anyone else playing this character. He does a really good job at being. He's kind of a scumball too, low key, like his
Mm-hmm.
character, and I love that because yes, we know he's a hero of the rebellion eventually. Spoilers, like he's kind of a scumball, and like I can see how he has to be that way. I mean, he's a con man, low key. He's a scumball. He'll kill when he needs to protect himself. I love those character moments about him. I think that Diego Luna does a really good job at playing his character. I think you mentioned it earlier about some of the character stuff, some of the small moments, even like the cantina scene while he's looking for his sister and he's going up against those, I guess the military police, what they're called or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
just seeing that soft moment, of him trying to figure out this whole thing with his sister, but also seeing like the desperation, also some fear mixed in with some like, hey, I got to do what I got to do to survive. And I love
Mm-hmm.
that. So I think Tony Gilroy has really hit it, perfectly with how he's developing that character.
Yeah, Ben.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you there. Like I think, as you mentioned, Diego Luna is for sure this character. Like I mean, when you see him, you think of Cassian now at this
Yes.
point. Like he's totally taken over the character, which is great because he's done it in a good job and a real notable job, I would say. And then like for this series, I would say so far, like I think they've really hit the beats of his character from Rogue One, if that would make sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like foreshadowing, like what would lead to his like character being where it's at in Rogue One. I mean,
Yep.
he's having to make tough
I was thinking the
choices.
same thing, Ben. I was thinking the same
Yep.
thing. I'm like, there's no skipping a beat here. Like I can see
Mm-hmm.
this is the same guy.
Yep. Oh, 100%. And anytime you have even with the same actor, you know, you have a chance of a character being off. Like for an easy example, actually, like a layup example is Harrison Ford in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Like there are moments in that movie he feels like Indiana Jones, and there are moments in that movie he feels like he's just a parody of Indiana Jones. And that's what makes that movie really bad. And then in this case, like Diego Luna feels like Cassian from Rogue One, which is good. Um, and then it's great seeing him get in like these positions where he's having to like deal with like worrying about being like caught, basically. Like nobody's
Yeah.
known his home planet. No one knows his home planet. Like, and all these things that are adding up to like basically now he's wanted by the, I guess you would say, the local police now. So it's definitely an interesting point to see where his character's going to go, because like right now, obviously he was like worried about trusting that, like the guy that was like, come with me, blah 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 blah, like that dude. Like Cassian's still having to worry about like trusting people. Like he's not at that point where he's trusting like the rebellion type people.
Oh yeah, it's definitely something that is pushing. You guys both put it like I was watching this. I was like, this feels like a Rogue One prequel without a doubt. This is the beginning, and we're gonna transcend here and go further away. But just the relationships he has with all these characters is bringing out his values. Like when he's talking to Marta, or he's talking to Bix, or he's talking to Tim, or whatever. It's like all these different characters. It just you get to see exactly what Cassian is at his core. Like you said, he's scummy. He's getting by however he can, and to me, this is what's so great about these series now is we could spend so much more time developing and understanding like where their headspace is when they make decisions that could affect in the future. Moving over to cinematography, this show definitely stood itself heads over shoulders above some of the other things on Disney Plus, and it's because, well, they simply built an entire freaking village out there in the UK, I believe it was, and you could tell. Like, I love the crowd shots. You're seeing like characters walk in front of walk in front of the camera, obscuring Cassian, and it's just it feels more alive. Like the world feels more lived in, and it feels like they just have the camera rolling at certain points when things are just happening. So I had to point that out because that experience is like something I don't want to have this show like as a show of pointing fingers at other Disney Plus shows tonight, but like there's been some recent series that we've both like had things to talk about.
All right. All right. Maybe we don't want this as the whole show, but I will point the fingers. I'll do the pointing. Kenobi. This is my question to Disney, to everybody at Lucasfilm doing these shows. Like, all right, we're all excited for Andor to see where this show goes and everything, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But why? I just need a question answered from anybody at Star Wars. Why does this show in 3 episodes look better than every single episode we got of Kenobi, a legacy character? Like, just answer that question. That's all I need answered.
Dead ass, because I was thinking the same. No lie, I
was shaking my head. I was like,
"This is the best CG / like sets they've had," and I'm throwing shade all the Star Wars shows except for Mando, because Mando's been on point. We've all had issues with Boba Fett's settings and all that shit like that. Like, this show looks like it was actually used with a film budget. I thought, this is an actual set. I don't believe there's any volume being used, and there might be. I can't tell. Even the last scene of them on the speeder going across the field, dude, beautiful cinematography, beautiful shot. And that could all that probably is all CG or whatever it is, but it's like you can't tell because it looks good, it looks legit. I'm trying to think. There was a couple shots where I think it was a couple night shots, and I'm thinking, man, like, it's well lit. I can see what's in front of me. I know exactly what's happening. And I'm thinking, most of these shows that when they're dark, you can't see anything. Like, this is like the lighting's on point. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like like they really put money in this.
Mm-hmm.
You're right,
well,
man.
here's
Obi-Wan Kenobi don't got the same treatment. Miss me with that.
Well, here's one to get me like, and that's no disrespect to Cassian as a character, but Obi-Wan's the character that deserves this type of a show, this type of budget, type of treatment, everything. But like, even pointing to like you mentioned, the lighting on some of the dark stuff. Okay, for example, look at like the Kenobi episode, the first time he encounters Vader. It's so dark, and like, sure, don't get me wrong, they intended for it to be kind of like a scary movie vibe, but it's so dark during those scenes. Obi-Wan just running behind sand piles and stuff, and like, that was shot bad. And then you have, just compare that even to the stuff in the jungle on Cassian's home planet. Look how like beautiful that shot. And like, it's like it doesn't even hold a glass of water or whatever the saying is. It doesn't even hold anything in the wind to the Kenobi show. Like, the Kenobi show is nothing in terms of like the Andor show.
Listen, the visuals in this show, again, thus far, is hype, and we haven't even got off planet yet. Like, even I was impressed with the space, like when they shot like the ships.
Yeah.
Thinking like, damn, like they got a movie budget. You know what I'm
Seriously.
saying? They look good.
Yeah.
Because I know your boy Campy has said about how like the next 3 episodes, like, we're going off planet. We're going to go to like the Coruscant potentially. And I'm like, I can't wait for that.
Yeah. Really?
If we get into the Rotunda, if we go to Coruscant, I'd be like, which we're going to see the Rotunda.
Yeah.
Which I can't wait. I'm saying I cannot wait to see them talking politics and what that looks like. And again, I know I'm going to like this show. I think just like those first 2 episodes kind of just set me back for a second. I do like the small character moments. I do like how he's very character developing. I think some of the story is a little off. I think that will get better as the show becomes more clear.
Mm-hmm. So we got to talk about one of the best aspects of this show, and that is Morlano 1, the pre-Morlano corpos, and this awesome inclusion of some really cool aspects of Star Wars, which I didn't think I would like this much. And I'm just chomping at the bit to talk about it, because it's like, I always looked at the canon and even the legends. You had like the Empire that couldn't really spread everywhere. So they relied on these other groups of people that were more like planetary to kind of be like the first defense or the first criminal justice and all that kind of thing. So like for instance on Corellia, and this is canon, in Corellia they have the Corsec, the Corellian security group, and they're basically in hoots with the Empire and all that kind of thing. And we finally get an aspect of that in live action with these guys. And it's really cool because they're like this, like they're putting a face to the villains in Star Wars again. They're not just shoving stormtroopers at us that are just going to get shot off and they look like robots, so we don't care about them. No, we get this awesome character, and his name is Cyril. Let me look it up. Cyril Karn. Sorry, some of these names I still don't have memorized just yet, but I will soon enough. Cyril Karn is this absolute like trash character guy that's like, he's a huge fascist, you know, all sense of the word. He's this guy that's just, he is that guy that you just love to hate, basically. And they've already made this character, me, kind of sympathetic to his calls already in 3 episodes, three short episodes. I was like, holy crap.
That's the young guy, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I love the idea of this guy trying to make a name for himself, just being aggravated and failing so hard that it's like, damn, this guy is really messing up. But you kind of feel for him because of the moments that they focus on him, and well, the acting of this actor, which I, you know, should give him credit. I'm gonna have to look that up in the meantime. But I really gravitated to this character. I feel like he's kind of like Hux a little bit, but I like him more than Hux already. And I just feel like this aspect of Star Wars where it's like you have this subgroup that is answering to the Empire, and it definitely helps that they have some really cool like technology design. I love, again, we're talking about how great the cinematography looks. You're looking at their planet of Morlana 1, you're seeing it in the rain, then you're seeing another part of like the security center of like these really cool monolithic looking buildings. When they pull up in their ship to Ferric, it looks like an Empire-esque design, but then they have these like little pod ships. So like, and then their uniforms are pretty bad at like everything about these guys. They like really, they flesh them out. And this is one of the best things about Andor is the sense of world building. Even though I'm tired of Star Wars going back to the old Galactic Civil War, I'm like, let's get into the High Republic. Let's get into beyond Rise of Skywalker. Let's explore new territories. We're set 5 years before Rogue One, and I still feel like this doesn't even feel like in that era sometimes. It is, and same thing with the Star Wars label. You could rip the Star Wars label off this show, and it's basically a really good drama series set in space somewhere. So I'll throw it over to you guys, because I really like this aspect of the show.
I think what I understand what you're saying, and I get that, and I agree. I think what's different about this show and the feel of it is that yes, the Empire exists, they do acknowledge it, you know, but we haven't heard anything about Jedi, Sith, the Force. We haven't heard any of that talk. A lot of it has been about just life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say life, what I mean is like you're seeing how life goes for normal people in the universe of Star Wars.
Oh man, yeah.
You know, you hear about some politics stuff, military stuff, you know, survival, making ends meet. You know, like that. I think that's what makes this show different. I think that's what makes us feel like it's a different type of Star Wars show. You may not believe we're in Star Wars, but we're in Star Wars. But we're not getting the normal pew pew, Death Star blow up, lightsaber, you know, Force. We're getting people actually have to work. People actually have to survive. We're getting police brutality. We're getting police taking advantage. We're getting people's homes raided. When's the last time we saw that in Star Wars?
Exactly.
We haven't seen modern day problems put into Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yes, we kind of got that in the 70s with like, you know, versus evil, Galactic Empire. You know, we got some of that parallel from the 70s into Star Wars at the time, but not as real as this. We're not getting real life problems like we're getting now. We're seeing people in real life now struggle with homelessness, with poverty, with not having enough food on the table, working at shitty jobs, or working at you know what I'm saying? Like these guys are working in factories, probably making nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing that grittiness.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think what makes this show really nice. I think Tony Gilroy showing us the underbelly of what Star Wars is.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yeah,
why this show feels so different.
Well said.
I think,
I was just gonna interject real quick.
Oh, go on. Yep,
I was just before I forget, the guy that plays Cyril Karn, his name is Kyle Soller. Kyle Soller. So there we go. Got to give him credit where credit's due because he's going to be one of my favorite characters from the series. But go on, Ben.
Oh yeah, I think he'll end up being a really good character. Like you said, he's sympathetic. But yeah, to like Milton's point, I think the reason why we're so interested in some of these like day-to-day things of this show, like you said, like the real life people, it's because for the most part, when we're watching any of the Star Wars movies, we're dealing with basically the governmental level of Star Wars on either side, good or bad. Because like if you think about it, like say like the rebels and the Empire, like the Empire's like your war opponent, and the rebels are like the U.S. government. Like how often are we seeing like the behind the scenes of our U.S. government? Not too much. So like that's why we were only focused on basically the highest level possible of governmental structure for both good and bad guys on the movies. And now we're actually seeing how it's impacting like the day-to-day lives of people, versus not. I mean, like that's one great thing. For example, like we got in like the Snyderverse. We had through Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Justice League. You have all these things that allude and even show like the everyday person. Like they reference like how when Batman and Superman were fighting, how much destruction it caused and damage it caused like the daily lives of people. Like in Star Wars, you don't get like the actual impact a lot of the times anyways on like the average everyday person.
Yeah, and what I think this is going to end up doing is it's going to make, we're getting this lens of, okay, how are the everyday people affected by the Empire? We haven't really gotten that in Star Wars. We gotten it in Star Wars Rebels a little bit, but for live action, we're seeing the mature tone of it, seeing how it's going to happen. We're seeing the people, their day-to-day jobs. We're seeing things like Bix getting, slammed up against the wall with, like Milton said, police brutality, that sort of thing happening, just crazy stuff, just like people getting caught in the crossfire, getting killed, houses like
we
this
saw
is
that.
Yeah.
I mean, we witnessed that. Like that third episode when he sees his girl, I don't know that guy's name, but the guy that snitched
Tim.
on Cassian, when he sees his girlfriend chained up, being like pretty much brutalized, and he's like, and we've seen this in real life. Where we've seen cops beating on somebody and people are filming it and say, hey, knock it off. They intervene and all of a sudden they're getting beat on and they want to get shot. So we saw the same echo, which I was like, damn, like they really went that far. Like they really showed that. Like, and I'm thinking that's real life. I think like, because my profession with my job is the child welfare social work background. We have 3 levels of social work: macro, micro, meso. This show reminds me so much of the micro side. We're seeing more individualized characters and individualized things being played out. We're seeing how Tony Gilroy is seeing this show through the eyes of the people. Make sense?
Yeah,
I'm getting a lot of that feel.
Yeah, and with Tony Gilroy, I think he is one of the only people that could do this. If you look at all the filmmakers for Star Wars currently and series and everything else, they all have the nostalgia glasses that all of us would obviously have. Like, we would be throwing in as many cool little tidbits as we could, but Tony Gilroy has gone on record a number of times saying, I'm not really a fan of Star Wars. I'm just, playing in their universe, bringing in my ideals and my story points. It just happens to be on planets that might be familiar with a character or two that might have been familiar. So I think we're seeing that firsthand here with the first 3 episodes of the power of having that happen. And I know in many years past, people would get so annoyed when they would see that news of, oh, this guy's going to be playing with the Star Wars license. It doesn't have a clue of what he's going to be doing because he doesn't really, respect the subject matter per se. And I think we're seeing the effect of the filmmakers don't really have to do that because they have a team of people that will do that for them. Like whoever the producers will be like, suggest to him, oh, let's put this alien character back here, and he'll probably just be like, okay, do it. Like, he's not concerned about that. He is going into the story more than anything else, and I can see that clearly here. Is pretty cool.
Well, I mean, so like you said, you don't have to have him be just like a mega Star Wars fan to like make a interesting thing, because also that's a whole nother discussion for another day as well. Like, when a lot of these people say they're Star Wars fans. Is it for PR or are they actually fans like, say, Dave Filoni is, for example? I feel like there's a difference between someone saying, yeah, I'm a fan, versus like Dave Filoni, who's seems to be really interested in it anyways, like stuff like that. I mean, heck, look at Christopher Nolan with The Dark Knight. Before that, he didn't have any comic book movie experience, and he came in and made, arguably the best comic book movie ever in The Dark Knight. So, you don't have to be a fan of the franchise to succeed in it. You just have to be competent at your job. And like you said, that's what he has. His job is to direct and make a movie. Like, Lucasfilm's job is to equip him with the proper information, to go like, oh, here's this tidbit to put in here, here's this tidbit to put in there. Like, I feel like we will, as the series drags on, like right now we're still early on in the show, but as it drags on, we'll get into more of, say, the nostalgia or the more those type of things, but they're going to be included naturally in the story as, like, say, Tony Gilroy sees fit, versus like them just being thrown in there, for example. Because, like, for me anyways, I think depending on how the show's going, like right now it's kind of not slow, but like we're not, the plot isn't advanced fully to Rebels versus Empire. Like, I don't think we're going to advance to that type of stuff, like really, really into that type of stuff until like maybe like halfway through the season, even like 6, 7, 8 episode range. Like, I think we're a ways away before we get to all that.
Oh yeah, I mean, we still haven't even gotten to Coruscant, which apparently is coming next week. So there's going to be a lot of backdoor dealing and the politics happening there. But just talking, we'll continue on the world building stuff. Just great moments for me that really stood out is just Bix hanging out with Tim. Like, she shows up like drunk at his place, and he's just like, "What are you doing?" Like, there's just like so many like human reactions. Like, you get to see like some stuff in Star Wars where, like, oh crap, I don't think we've ever seen people like making out about to get it on like that in Star Wars. Like, this is like, whoa, okay, what's happening here? And the fact that like she's waking up and the first thing she says is, I need some calf, and that was a little nugget, a little Easter egg that it's like, yes, they're always getting calf in the books and everything else, and we finally get to hear that. We get to see her drinking calf. I know it's the smallest little thing, but for me, it's like, that's the average day worker doing that. I love. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say, I like the idea of time and schedules in this show. I picked up all this on the second viewing about how you have the guy with the bells, or the big anvil thing he's hitting, and that's like signifying like the beginning of the workday and the end of the workday. And about how they're like, Cassian's like, tomorrow I'm going to do the deal. And like, you see the ramp up of like the time based on the guy hammering, and like just the looking at that guy's grabbing their gloves to go out in the fields and the trash field, whatever, and work and stuff like that. Like, it is so down to earth, but it is so refreshing. Cause and I'll mention this on Twitter, one of the, I think he's like the lead editor for the Star Wars books over at Del Rey, has said he never seen a story for Star Wars on the screen that looked like, or that felt more like a Star Wars book. And I have to agree with him. Like, I felt like I was watching a Star Wars novel like play out on screen, because you have a lot of these more minor characters doing their everyday sort of thing, filling in the gaps and making it feel like it's like, okay, this is much more character focused. So yeah, that was fun. Seeing him at the shipyard, like switching out this one thing, this component for another thing. The guy's walking around like, "Hey, where were you last night?" So it's very much like a small town feel of like everybody knows everybody. And already 3 episodes in, I'm invested with all these small minor characters than I would have been never otherwise in any other kind of show so far. So
I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. No doubt.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like you mentioned, Chris, like a lot of the world building, like through the characters, through the towns, through the the locations as a whole, like, the police force, like all these different things are part of like the world building of Star Wars. Like, one of the parts, we joked around about it to start this podcast, but like them even so like when I was watching the premiere, my good friend was over here and we were watching it, and he was like, is that is that a brothel they're in? And I was like, nah, probably not. And then like 2 scenes later, they literally said the word brothel. I was like, what in the world? Like, they actually put like something
Yeah.
like that in Star Wars.
I know.
Like, so that's cool that they're giving them freedom to actually include, like, even referencing that type of material because it's Disney, it's Star Wars, so it's play it safe. So I was very surprised they added that in there. I doubt we're getting revisits back to Game of Thrones style, but I'm impressed that they actually are allowed to go there to even like reference that type of stuff.
Oh yeah, it's definitely something that I would have never expected. But then again, Disney Plus does seem like it wants to expand its reach. I mean, we said last week we're getting that What If mature series. They put Logan and they put the other R-rated superhero films on there. So hey, maybe they are, and that's a different franchise entirely. But now Star Wars is it surprised me because the episode came on. It said TV 14 and it said language and violence, and there goes like the Scottish guy saying shit at the end of the third episode. I was like, oh damn, bastards and shit. I was like, okay, this is the furthest we've been going with this stuff, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, any last thoughts and words on just the general world building so far in Andor, Milton?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm pleased with what they're trying to do. I think as I get more into this show, I think I'll be more satisfied. It makes sense that this show feels different. I mean, if it was the same show, I think we would be fine with it, but we'd be kind of disappointed because we're like, all right, we've seen this before. But I'm glad that this feels like a Rogue One story, a prequel for sure. Like this feels like this belongs in the world of Rogue One, and I say it that way because yes, Star Wars or Rogue One connected well to New Hope. I feel like Rogue One and Andor thus far can be its own little world or like own little like IP if you really wanted to do it that way. Does that make sense to you? I feel like how
like the Mandoverse.
Yeah, it can be its own IP, which I think it's a good thing that they have enough separation yet similarity that ties into it. I'm fine with what they're trying to do.
And one last thing about the Corpo guys. I love that conversation where we first see him in the office and the one chief guy is basically like just trying to skirt everything under the rug because it's going to make him and it's going to make like his employees look better. Like I love the fact of like this stupid like fascist like bureaucracy that they have going on where it's just like, yeah, we don't really care. We're just trying to get our numbers up. Like, 2 people died. Like, and this guy's literally standing up to his own men. Like no, like those are 2 people that I worked with. Like, we're not just gonna sweep this under the rug. So that sort of thing was like, oh man, this is a cool conversation that Star Wars is at its best when it's like taking on like a little bit harder, edge type of subject matter, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely. I took it as like, oh boy, he cares a lot clearly, but he's trying to get ahead. I think he's trying to prove something because I can say they're doing a good job at shooting his face and how they show how his facial features are all goofy. Like even when he gave that very awkward speech,
The speech.
like how no, literally, I thought you might have to censor this, but the one black dude was thinking like, man, what the fuck is he talking about? Like that's what I thought he was thinking.
Yeah.
Look, Ben and Chris, watch that. I swear to God, he was thinking what I just said. Like, what the f was that, dude? Like this dude ain't no leader. Like the Scottish guys seem more like a leader.
Yeah.
I think they purposely are shooting him that way because I think there's something more about this character that we don't know about.
I think he's joining the Rebels, man. I think they are transparent with that, or they're telegraphing like he's going to join Rebels. The fact that Cassian and Luthen's just like kill him, and Cassian's like, no, for whatever reason he had killed the other guy out of cold blood, but he won't kill this guy for some reason. They're saving him for a redemption arc of some, or maybe not a redemption arc, but he's going to defect to the Rebels at some point. It's gotta probably happen.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, they definitely kind of showed their hand a little bit with that guy, because I think he's, as we mentioned earlier when we discussed him, they've already put some sympathetic vibes to his character, so it's like, why wouldn't he eventually turn? And like, that's the motif right now for a lot of these like characters, bad, semi-bad people turning good eventually at the end. So I could definitely see his character transitioning to almost like this could be like our Agent Callus, I would say, like something like that. Yeah, I feel like he's gonna have a very similar arc to Agent Callus.
Yeah. So let's talk about the action, because man, oh man, this action was freaking awesome, especially in episode 3. We talked about this scene a little bit last week or the week before when we did our Andor preview of like that snippet of like they were inside whatever the heck that was, looked like the freaking engines or something hanging, and just that little firefight going on. But just in general, that back half of episode 3 was just like off the wall. You could feel the intensity. It definitely felt more like a spy thing, because the people were literally rebelling. Like, they're like, enough is enough. Like, we're going to sabotage your ship and you're going to crash into this thing in glory. And you're going to feel like you're being surrounded, and they're thinking it's like, oh my gosh, they're, so Milton, tell me what your reaction was to the carnage and everything that was happening in that 3rd episode.
Loved it. Like, it was a dope. First of all, that factory scene with the falling engines or components or whatever, fire. Like, I thought that was well shot. I honestly, I'm sure that was had to been CG. There's no way that's practical. How do you pull that off?
Well, he got knocked by one of them, so it was practical. He got knocked by one of them.
Well, I'm sure there's some practical effects in there, but way it just looked so real, and I'm like, wait a minute, you have to control the way that stunt looks, so it has to be CG, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I mean, there could be. Look, it was well done. Can't complain. I love the suspense. It reminded me of the end. It reminded me of the end of Rogue One, how they were climbing up the ladder to get the disc, and like how that music built up for it, and like just how suspenseful it was. I thought this 3rd episode's ending was very much like that. How it led up, and then it got your payoff, and how they just quietly ended it with him on the speeder, with the flashback, and just have that parallel. So I love the action. Some of the best action in Star Wars I've seen in a while.
Yeah, and it shows you right off the bat, they're not afraid to kill off characters. Like, that Tim guy was in at least 2 episodes, and they shot him dead pretty good. And that's I don't know if it's the beauty part of having all these unknown characters, but it definitely seems like they're pulling no punches on this series, and it adds up to the stakes. I mean, I know Andor's fate, but what about all these other characters? And as I said, I'm already feeling about those characters, but yeah, just, by the way, I got to do a quick little Easter egg thing. The gun that Cassian has that apparently was given to him by Clem, which we know was hanged in the place his father somewhere he was hanged. That was actually the same kind of blaster that Kyle Katarn from the Dark Forces Jedi Knight Jedi Outcast video games has. So that was like, ooh, maybe Cassian will give him that gun and we'll see Kyle Katarn. No, that's not happening. But I thought that was a cool little nod to like the Dark Forces games. Like, he's got like that almost like a shotgun, like handheld little gun. But yeah, the suspense and like the way that it was edited and filmed. So like at that one point, Cassian has the blaster on the back of Cyril's head, just like, yeah, just you're caught basically. But everything going on, and the fact that the music was ramped up, and all these citizens were just like bashing on the metal stuff, just like as a warning. And they're like, oh, they're intimidating. Like, that was so cool. Seeing the people rise up just by like that. They're just standing up to these people. And that's their way of standing up, is just like making a bunch of noise, getting them their communication like all screwed up. That was awesome.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, oh yeah, I agree with both you guys. Like the just the build up, I think, of the action for, like you said, the scene with the citizens like banging on everything, the scene, like the factory scene, like I think the lead up to these action sequences was done really well, like in a good built up way, versus just like say jumping right into it. Like, you know, you felt the suspense, you felt the build up, and I really like that. And a good point that you noted too, Chris, was the whole, you know, not knowing the fate of basically all the characters for the most part. Like, you know, because if this was a show, I mean, even talking like say about the Kenobi show, we knew the fate. Like almost every character had plot armor minus Reva for the most part for Kenobi. So like it's hard when you have a show like that to like build the stakes for some of the characters when you know you already know where they end up. So it's great like that they're introducing characters that we don't know what could happen to them. Like heck, you know, the young cop guy, like he could end up, if he turns, he could still end up getting taken out like at the very end by one of the Imperials, like who track him down or whatever, you know, like, you know. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for storytelling, you know, through the action, through the suspense of the characters' fates, I would say, just because, you know, a lot of people, you know, actually not a lot of people, none of us know where these characters go, minus Cassian.
Yeah. Is there any other things, topics? I mean, we're keeping us to an hour, so it's very hard to just kind of concise our thoughts here. Any other topics or anything else you want to jump into relating to Andor before we jump to our final thoughts here?
I mean, I guess I just want to say, like I said, I think we need to. If anyone's like me initially for the first two episodes, like was like, I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure about this, but then they got the payoff in episode 3. I think it's worth the wait to at least keep watching a couple episodes, because I think the show deserves it, and I think the way they present these episodes was purposely done. You know, and I've always said, you know, my philosophy is with these miniseries, you can't just show one or two or one episode. You got to show 2 or 3, and they gave me 2 or 3, and I think with how that particular, and then Chris, you said it, arc played out, I'm now going to be invested to see how this is going to now lead up. The next 9 episodes are going to be released. So if you're on the fence about it, give it an opportunity, let it play out, and then make your judgment.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. You shouldn't. I mean, you shouldn't need 3 episodes of a series to really be hooked, right? I look at a most recent show, The House of the Dragons. I know, Ben, you love the show too. That first episode, that pilot episode, that's all you needed. You watch that episode, you are hooked. You know exactly what's going on with the story. You know what is going to happen the rest of the season. Yeah, Andor, it could have had probably a stronger first episode. But then you also got to weigh it down that they released 3 episodes at once because they knew by the third one, that's the arc that would hook you. But yeah, so that is worth noting. Yeah, Milton, you said it already. Just, yeah, if you're on the fence, I think it's really worth waiting. From what I heard, the show gets better and better and better from people I've seen like other episodes past episode 3 already somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to wrap this up and give our final thoughts on episodes 1 through 3 and give it a score based on all 3 altogether. I will start this one off. And yeah, so much to talk about, so much to say. We spend a lot of the time, probably most of the time, just talking about the world building. And I think that's what a lot of people are talking about in the community, in the fandom right now. It's just the way it feels, the way we're getting the different characters. We're getting to see the home life of people. But then again, we're getting that for a reason. We're going to see how affected that life becomes when the Empire's boot steps down on them. Seeing characters, a brand new droid. I love the brand new droid. We even talk about B2EMO. Got a cool human voice to an astromech, which is something we've never seen in Star Wars before. So many Easter eggs in this, from the Corellian Hounds, from Solo to Lugga Beast I seen in the background from The Force Awakens, to like prequel pod racer engines it looks like they were working on. So there's a lot of fun to be had there, but just everything with the pre-Mor corpos, the pre-ex Morlano police force, all that, you know, that kind of stuff. And just the characters. We got Bix is a really cool, strong female character that has a lot of toughness to her. You got Cyril Karn, who we spent a lot of time talking about. This guy that is kind of questioning whether what he's doing is going to be even correct after episode 3. Cassian, the titular character, just seeing him trying to tread water at this point of his life, just not knowing where to go, and he's getting swept up into all this. The music was fantastic. The ambiance, everything just felt so different. I got to give this a 9 out of 10. Yes, as I just said before, it shouldn't have had 3 episodes to like really cement itself. So that's where I'll take a point off. It's like, yeah, maybe episode 2 could have had a little bit more action, a little bit more forward momentum as far as like a plot was concerned, but it really took that episode 2 to make episode 3 great. If that episode 2 didn't exist, then I wouldn't, at least the way I felt, I wouldn't feel as attached to certain characters getting killed and harmed and stuff like that. So yeah, this is up there with me with Mandalorian episode 1, season 1. Like the fact of this thing existing feels so much different than everything else that we got for Star Wars so far. The direction, the writing from Tony Gilroy, I think really stands out. I'll throw this over to Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with a lot of those points, but for me, I would say, the episode, all 3 episodes overall were pretty. The first 2 were, like Milton said, not super impressive. The third one was definitely the best. And then, like for me, when it comes to these episodes, like we've talked about this whole podcast, like the world building was done really well. It's nice getting new characters that, we don't know the fate, so there's no plot armor. And then, of course, Cassian's character journey is going to be a nice one because, we referenced it earlier. Like, this feels like the Cassian we know, like a prior version of the Cassian we know from Rogue One, which is great because there was that chance, he could pull a Harrison Ford in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, so it's good that didn't happen. And then, yeah, like overall, I just think the quality of the show is right there with The Mandalorian. It's better quality than Boba or Kenobi, and it's right there with Mando in terms of quality, I would say. So, like for me, there weren't really many negatives per se. Like, I just feel like there was a lot of, the first 2 episodes were pretty slow, to say the least. And I feel like it could have almost been crunched down into, say, like episode 1 and 2 could have been crunched to 1 episode, and then have the 3rd episode be episode 2, and then use that extra episode somewhere else in the series altogether. Like, I feel like you could have just chopped it way down. And then in terms of music, like for me, I think the music was all right. I don't think it was great. Like for me, I think it was more just mid-tier. Nothing bad, nothing spectacular. Just average music. But again, we gotta grow on it. We gotta get more used to it and see how the beats hit later on in the series for like more dramatic moments than just what we've dealt with so far. And then some of the new characters that were introduced have been really nice. Like the Karns guy, like he's probably going to end up being, I feel like, one of the more main type of characters through this series with Cassian as well, because I feel like we could, as I mentioned, we could have an Agent Callus tracking Cassian type situation potentially on our hands, which that'd be cool. But for me, overall, I think the 3 episode premiere was, I would say, satisfactory. Like it's solid. It's kind of like this. I used this analogy yesterday when I was talking to my cousin about this. I don't think these episodes were bad. Think of this in terms of getting a burger. Okay, so McDonald's is your lowest tier burger place. Okay, and then you have a really high-end expensive burger place that would be like a perfect score. And then to me, like these episodes were kind of like your Applebee's, like your mid-tier solid burger, just satisfactory. So, it's just a good solid burger. And, that's fine. That's fine. Like to me, you don't have to hit a home run right away. Like it's fine. It's just satisfactory. So for me, I would say this is probably a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10, very fair. As far as the music, I think the music did really well with the suspense building. It just reminded me a lot of like it reminded me a lot of like a spy thriller should be. Like it's ramping up. Like you're not sure what's gonna happen, where Andor is, like what's gonna happen. Like that like complemented the action so well for me, where I was like on the edge of my seat, like gripped, like engaged, like, okay, things are boiling, they're getting heated up. Like it felt like it was coming up, to an explosion at that point. Milton?
Overall, I thought for what this show did in the first 3 episodes, I think it did what it needed to do. I think it did what it was trying to accomplish. So I'll look at it in 2 points. One, story. One, overall comparison to the last couple of Star Wars series. So I think visually, it's way better looking than all the other Star Wars shows we've had. I mean, that's just a given. I think just how they shot it, cinematography, character beats, I think are slightly or significantly better in this show. Story wise, I think because that first 2 episodes, and Ben's right, it probably could have been all combined into one. I think those really made it. I struggled with that first episode and a half. Overall, I thoroughly liked how it ended that particular arc. I'm looking forward to seeing more. Pretty much all the positives you guys said about the music, how the suspense built up, the small character beats, the visuals, anticipation, a lot of the differences of this show and how it doesn't feel like it's in Star Wars, but it don't feel like it needs to be that traditional Star Wars. So I think Tony Gilroy did what he was trying to do on purpose. I had to score this out of 10. Probably would. I'd probably go 7 out of 10 because I think episode 2 really like stuck me like in my heart because I'm thinking like, where is this going? It dropped it down.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think it's a 7 out of 10. Now, with that being said, I think once I rewatch it, fully understand where they're trying to take this, my score could probably go up. So you might hear about this next week when we come back.
Yeah. All right, that's fair. We got a 7, and a 9. So yeah, we're gonna stop it there for this week, but join us next week at our normal time of Friday at 9 o'clock. I want to thank everybody that joined us in the chat tonight. We had Chris, we had Topify, we had Ryan Johnson. Thanks to everybody for joining in the chat. And you could do so next Friday at 9 o'clock Eastern when we go back to our normal recording/streaming time. And again, you could listen to us on the go anywhere in the world simply using Spotify or Apple or any kind of podcast streaming service. We put our new episodes out on Monday mornings for your work week or whatever you do. So where can the guys find you, or where can the people find you, and what are you up to this week, Milton and Ben?
Well, I know this weekend I have, unfortunately, a family reunion I have to go to on Saturday. I'm not looking forward to it because those are always weird. But I told my dad I'll go because he asked me. But I have a family reunion on the weekend. But also there's college football. I do know Saturday night, my friend I'm hanging out with, Amanda, who does watch us, watching Empire Strikes Back. So you will get an update
Nice.
next week about what she thinks of that movie. And
Oh,
on
man.
Sunday, obviously the Eagles are playing, so let's go.
Yeah, they're doing pretty good from what I hear.
2-0, let's go.
And they can follow you at Milton Weber 7 on Twitter and Milton 7 Weber on Instagram. Is that right?
That's correct. My bad on not mentioning the socials. I just get excited when I hear about my Eagles being 2-0. Sorry about your Browns, Ben, for losing to the Jets last week, which really upset me because I picked the Jets to lose. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you can find me complaining about the Browns on Twitter at Real Ben Maynard, and of course talking Star Wars there. And then you can find me on Instagram posting my workouts and stuff as well at Real Ben Maynard.
There you go. And you can find me talking about the High Republic Phase 2. That's right, everybody. I have put up my review for the first book of Phase 2 called Path of Deceit. I have my spoiler-free review on the channel you can check out right now, as well as this week's comics, which we had Star Wars Darth Vader, issue number 27. We had Hyperspace Stories, issue number 2. And we had the Mandalorian adaptation comic for episode 3, issue number 3. So there you have it. Stay tuned for the channel for more Star Wars content coming out. As we get more into Andor, I will be putting out more Andor companion-related videos, which I did with Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan before that. But otherwise, please subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be notified when these videos go live, as well as other videos on the channel. But that's going to do it for Milton, for Ben, for Chris, aka Starrapter. Thank you so much for watching. This was Outer Rim Transmission number 76. May the Force be with you always. End transmission. All right.
There we go.
We got you here exactly at 10 o'clock